First contact complications. The crystalline spires of the Aetherian capital gleamed like frozen starlight against the purple-hued sky. Commander Lyra Blackwood stood at the viewport of her diplomatic vessel, adjusting the collar of her midnight blue uniform. The twin moons of Aetheria cast an ethereal glow across the planet's surface, making the entire world seem like it was crafted from living crystal. Final approach clearance granted, Commander. Lieutenant Reina Santos reported from her station. The Aetherian High Council awaits our arrival. Lyra nodded, her dark hair caught in the ambient light. Any last-minute intelligence about Prince Zenith? Only what we already know, Reina replied, bringing up a holographic display. Third in line to the Aetherian throne, known for his progressive views on interstellar relations and reportedly skeptical of the traditional isolationist policies. The diplomatic mission had seemed straightforward when Earth's United Council first proposed it. With tensions rising between humanity and the Aetherian Empire over mining rights in the Carina Nebula, someone needed to broker peace. What they hadn't mentioned was the prince's reputation for being as unpredictable as he was brilliant. Their ship, the Stellar Envoy, descended through layers of iridescent clouds. The landing pad extended from one of the crystal towers like a translucent tongue, shimmering with protective energy fields. As they touched down, Lyra caught her first glimpse of the welcoming party. Prince Zenith stood at the forefront, his tall, elegant frame draped in robes that seemed to capture and reflect the very essence of starlight. His skin held a subtle blue tinge, characteristic of the Aetherians, but it was his eyes that caught Lyra's attention. They swirled with patterns that resembled distant galaxies. Remember, Reina whispered as they prepared to disembark. The Aetherians consider direct eye contact an intimate gesture. Try not to. Commander Blackwood, Prince Zenith's voice carried across the landing pad, cutting through Reina's warning. Your arrival brings starlight to our skies. Lyra stepped forward, executing the traditional Aetherian greeting, a complex gesture involving both hands that symbolized the joining of celestial bodies. Your Highness, we bring greetings from Earth and hopes for peaceful dialogue. The prince's galaxy eyes fixed directly on hers, breaking every protocol in the diplomatic handbook. A subtle smile played at the corners of his mouth. Peaceful dialogue. Is that truly all Earth sends? Our seers speak of greater purpose in your coming. A murmur rippled through the assembled Aetherian court. Lyra maintained her diplomatic composure, though her heart raced. This wasn't how first contact was supposed to go. Your seers honor us with their attention, Your Highness. However, our immediate concern is the dispute over the Carina Nebula. Ah yes, the nebula. Zenith gestured for them to follow him into the palace. Where your people see resources to be mined, we see the cradle of future stars. Tell me, Commander, how does one reconcile such fundamentally different perspectives? As they walked through corridors that seemed to sing with crystalline resonance, Lyra noticed how the prince's movements created ripples of light in the air around him. The Aetherians were known for their deep connection to what they called the cosmic symphony, the fundamental energies that bound the universe together. Perhaps, Lyra ventured, by finding harmony between our different songs, Earth's need for resources doesn't have to conflict with Aetheria's spiritual connection to the cosmos. Zenith stopped so suddenly that several courtiers nearly collided with him. He turned to face Lyra, those galaxy eyes swirling with increased intensity. You speak our language, Commander, though you may not realize it. Come, there is something I must show you before the formal negotiations begin. The prince led them to a chamber deep within the palace. The walls here were different, darker, more ancient. They seemed to pulse with their own internal light. This is the Hall of Convergence, Zenith explained. For millennia, our seers have recorded their visions here. Would you like to know what they say about you, Commander Blackwood? Cultural crossroads. The Hall of Convergence thrummed with ancient power as Prince Zenith guided Lyra toward a particular section of the crystalline wall. Lieutenant Reina Santos shifted uncomfortably behind them, her hand never far from her ceremonial sidearm. These markings, Zenith traced his fingers along patterns that seemed to shift and dance beneath his touch, appeared 3 cycles ago. They speak of a bridge between stars, forged not by technology, but by understanding. The patterns coalesced into an image that made Lyra's breath catch. 2 figures, one human, one Aetherian, their energies intertwined. "Your Highness," a sharp voice cut through the moment. High Counselor Vex strode into the chamber, his traditional robes crackling with barely contained energy. The formal delegation awaits. This private tour violates all protocols. Zenith's expression hardened, though his voice remained diplomatic. "Counselor, perhaps our protocols need revision. Commander Blackwood shows remarkable insight into our ways." The commander, Vex's tone dripped with barely concealed disdain, "is here to discuss mining rights, nothing more." His eyes narrowed as he noticed the prophetic markings. Some histories are not meant for outsider eyes. Lyra stepped forward, her diplomatic training kicking in. "Counselor, we respect your traditions. However, mutual understanding requires openness on both sides." Bold words, Vex sneered, from a species that would tear apart a stellar nursery for resources. The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop several degrees. Zenith moved subtly, positioning himself between Lyra and the counselor. "Enough, Vex. The commander speaks truth. Our isolation has served its purpose, but times change. Even stars must evolve." As tensions mounted, the crystalline walls began to pulse with increasing intensity. Lyra noticed something strange. The pattern seemed to respond to her presence, creating intricate designs where she stood. Zenith noticed too, his galaxy eyes widening with wonder. "Impossible," Vex whispered, his hostility momentarily forgotten. "The walls respond to her resonance." "Not impossible," Zenith countered, a smile playing at his lips. "Prophesied. The markings speak of one who would come from beyond the stars, whose song would harmonize with our own." Lyra felt a strange sensation. Like music, she could feel rather than hear. The patterns around her grew more complex, interweaving with Zenith's own energy signature. Reyna stepped closer, her scientific curiosity overcoming her caution. "Commander," she whispered, "your biometric readings are synchronizing with the local energy field. I've never seen anything like it." Before anyone could respond, a deep chime resonated through the palace. The formal negotiations were about to begin. Vex straightened his robes, composure restored. "We will discuss this anomaly later. For now, duty calls." As they made their way to the Grand Assembly chamber, Zenith fell into step beside Lyra. "You felt it, didn't you? The resonance." "I felt something," she admitted, "but I'm not sure I understand what it means." "It means," he replied softly, "that perhaps both our peoples have been asking the wrong questions. We debate mining rights while the universe itself shows us a different path." The Grand Assembly chamber took Lyra's breath away. The vast space was dominated by a ceiling that seemed to capture and display the entire galaxy in living light. Hundreds of Aetherian nobles filled the tiered seating, their combined energy signatures creating a spectacular aurora above. As Lyra prepared to present Earth's proposal, she noticed something unusual. The galactic display above seemed to shift, focusing on the Carina Nebula. But instead of showing it as either a resource or a spiritual site, it displayed something else, a pattern of energy flows that suggested both purposes could coexist. "Distinguished members of the Assembly," she began, departing from her prepared speech, "what we see above us suggests that our peoples need not be in conflict. The Carina Nebula pulses with both physical and spiritual energy. Perhaps there's a way to harvest what we need while preserving what you hold sacred." A murmur rippled through the assembly. Vex rose to object, but Zenith spoke first. "The commander speaks wisdom. Our seers have long told us that change would come from the stars. Perhaps it's time we listened." The next few hours passed in intense discussion. Lyra found herself drawing on everything she knew about both human innovation and Aetherian spirituality. Whenever the debate grew heated, The galactic display would shift, showing new patterns that demanded attention. As the session drew to a close, Zenith made an unprecedented proposal. Let us form the Joint Commission, not just for mining rights, but for true cultural exchange. Commander Blackwood has demonstrated that humans can understand our ways. Perhaps it's time we try to understand theirs. The assembly erupted in discussion. Lyra caught Reyna's eye, seeing her own mix of hope and uncertainty reflected there. Whatever happened next would change both their civilizations forever. In the midst of the chaos, Zenith leaned close to Lyra. "There's something else you should know," he whispered. "The prophecy doesn't just speak of harmony between our peoples. It speaks of a union that transcends diplomacy." Before Lyra could respond, the crystal walls began to sing. Stellar negotiations. The crystal song reverberated through the grand assembly chamber, creating harmonics that hadn't been heard in generations. The Aetherian nobles fell silent, their attention drawn to the phenomenon. Even Counselor Vex seemed momentarily stunned by the display. "The voice of the ancients," Zenith explained to Lyra, his galaxy eyes reflecting the swirling patterns above. "The crystals only sing when momentous changes approach." As if in response to his words, the galactic display above transformed, showing a series of interconnected pathways between Earth and Aetheria. Each pathway glowed with potential trade routes, cultural exchanges, and something more, something deeper that made Lyra's heart race. "This is unprecedented." First speaker Lizara stepped forward, her ancient form seemingly energized by the crystal song. "In all our recorded history, the crystals have never responded to an outsider's presence this way." Lyra felt the strange resonance growing stronger, creating visible ripples in the air where her energy signature met Zenith's. The prince moved closer, apparently drawn by the same inexplicable force. "Perhaps," he addressed the assembly, "this is the universe itself showing us the way forward. We've isolated ourselves for so long, claiming it was to preserve our culture. But what if our culture was meant to evolve?" Vex slammed his staff against the crystal floor, sending discordant vibrations through the chamber. "Evolution is one thing, Your Highness, but what you suggest, opening our most sacred sites to human mining operations, borders on heresy." "Not mining," Lyra interjected, the resonance giving her words unexpected power. "Partnership. What if we combined Earth's technological expertise with Aetherian spiritual understanding? The nebula's energy could be harvested in harmony with its natural cycles." The galactic display shifted again, showing a simulation of her proposal. Earth vessels, modified with Aetherian crystal technology, moving through the nebula like gentle currents rather than invasive forces. "Impossible," Vex scoffed, but there was uncertainty in his voice. "Is it?" First speaker Lizara moved to study the display more closely. "Our ancestors spoke of a time when technology and spirituality were one. Perhaps that time has come again." As the debate continued, Lyra noticed something strange. Every time she and Zenith moved in synchronization, the crystal song grew stronger, more complex. The prince noticed too, his expression a mixture of wonder and growing understanding. "There's more to this than simple diplomacy," he whispered during a brief recess. "The prophecies speak of a joining, not just of our peoples, but of specific souls whose union would bridge the gap between our worlds." Lyra felt her pulse quicken. "Are you suggesting that the universe itself has orchestrated our meeting?" "Yes." Zenith's galaxy eyes swirled with intensity. "The question is, are we brave enough to follow where it leads?" Before she could respond, Reyna approached with urgent news. "Commander, we're receiving reports from the nebula. Something's happening. Energy patterns are shifting in ways our scientists can't explain." The assembly reconvened quickly. The galactic display showed the Carina Nebula in real time, its swirling energies forming patterns that mirrored the resonance between Lyra and Zenith. "The nebula responds to them," first speaker Lizara announced, her voice carrying ancient authority. "Just as our ancestors foretold. When stars align and souls entwine, the path between worlds shall be revealed." Vex stepped forward, his opposition softening in the face of undeniable evidence. If this is truly the will of the cosmos, then we must consider all possibilities. But the question remains, how do we proceed? Zenith turned to Lyra, his next words carrying the weight of destiny. Among my people, there is an ancient tradition. When two souls demonstrate such clear resonance, they are bound together as representatives of their peoples, a union that transcends political alliance. The crystal song reached a crescendo, and in that moment, Lyra understood. This wasn't just about mining rights or diplomatic relations. The universe had bigger plans, and she and Zenith were at the center of them. A marriage, she breathed, the word sending ripples through the crystal walls. Not just a marriage, Zenith replied, his voice mingling with the crystal song. A convergence of destinies that could change everything. The assembly erupted in a mixture of shock, wonder, and speculation. But as Lyra met Zenith's galaxy eyes, she knew they had passed the point of no return. The real negotiations were just beginning. Traditions and technology. The news of the proposed union between Commander Lyra Blackwood and Prince Zenith spread through both civilizations like a shockwave. The Crystal Palace hummed with constant activity as preparations began for ceremonies that would blend both human and Aetherian traditions. The resonance chamber must be prepared. First speaker Lizara explained, leading Lyra through ancient corridors. For millennia, it has tested the compatibility of souls. Never has it been used for a human-Aetherian pairing. The chamber itself took Lyra's breath away. Unlike the ornate architecture of the palace's public spaces, this room was pure energy contained within crystalline walls. Streams of light flowed like liquid starlight through channels in the floor. Your earth sciences would call it quantum entanglement, Zenith explained, joining them. We call it soul binding. The chamber reveals whether two beings can truly harmonize their essential energies. Reyna, who had insisted on being present for security purposes, scanned the room with barely concealed fascination. Commander, the energy readings are off the charts. This technology, or magic, whatever it is, it's beyond anything we've encountered. Because it's both, Lizara smiled. Technology and spirituality were never meant to be separate. Your people lost this understanding. We isolated ourselves to preserve it. Perhaps now, together, we can find a new balance. As Lyra stepped into the chamber proper, the streams of light responded immediately, rising up to dance around her like auroral ribbons. Zenith moved to join her, and the light show intensified, creating complex patterns that reflected both their energy signatures. Extraordinary, Lizara breathed. The chamber usually requires hours of meditation to achieve even basic resonance. Yet you two. Their energies intertwined naturally, creating displays that had the ancient first speaker consulting equally ancient texts. Vex, who had been observing silently, finally spoke. The patterns, they mirror the prophecies exactly. Perhaps we were too hasty in our judgment of humans. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. As the days progressed, cultural differences created unexpected challenges. Earth's diplomatic corps struggled to understand Aetherian marriage protocols, while the Aetherian court found human customs bewilderingly direct. You mean humans simply? Ask for union. An Aetherian noble asked, scandalized, without consulting the stellar alignments or performing the ritual of 7 moons. And Aetherians spend 3 cycles just preparing for the preparation ceremonies. Reyna countered, equally baffled. No wonder you haven't had contact with other species. The real breakthrough came during a joint technology demonstration. Earth engineers had been working to modify their mining equipment based on Aetherian crystal principles. The result was something entirely new: devices that could harvest nebula energy while actually strengthening the stellar nursery's spiritual resonance. It's perfect, Zenith declared, watching the simulation. A physical representation of what our union could achieve. Neither purely human nor purely Aetherian, but something greater than both. Yet not everyone was convinced. A faction of traditionalists, led by elements even more conservative than Vex, began to voice opposition. They claimed the union would dilute Aetherian purity, that human influence would destroy their way of life. The tension came to a head during a crucial ceremony in the resonance chamber. As Lyra and Zenith prepared to undergo the formal soul-binding ritual, alarms blared throughout the palace. Someone had sabotaged the chamber's containment systems. The energy patterns are destabilizing. Reyna shouted, her instruments going haywire. If they collapse, the release of quantum spiritual energy could tear a hole in space-time. Lizara finished grimly. But rather than flee, Lyra and Zenith moved deeper into the chamber. Their combined resonance, now stronger than ever, began to stabilize the wild energy fluctuations. The crystal song rose to a fever pitch as their energies merged completely, creating a harmonizing effect that rippled out through the entire palace. When it was over, even the traditionalists couldn't deny what they'd witnessed. The threat had been neutralized not by technology alone, nor by spiritual power alone, but by the seamless union of both approaches and both peoples. This is what we've been afraid of, Vex mused, watching the aftermath. Perhaps fear itself was our greatest enemy. As the chamber settled back into its normal patterns, Lyra and Zenith remained at its center, their energies still intertwined. The crisis had proved what they'd suspected all along. Together, they could achieve things that neither of their civilizations could accomplish alone. Ready for the next challenge? Zenith asked, his galaxy eyes swirling with both love and determination. Lyra smiled, feeling their shared resonance pulse with possibility. Always, though preferably with less risk of tearing apart space-time. The crystal walls sang in harmony with their laughter, a promise of things to come. Celestial ceremonies. The day of the binding ceremony dawned with both sons of Aetheria casting prismatic light through the crystal spires. The great ceremonial hall had been transformed, blending Earth's traditions with Aetherian sacred geometry in ways never before attempted. Lyra stood in her preparation chamber, wearing a gown that seemed to capture starlight itself. Aetherian crystal weavers had worked with Earth's finest designers to create something unprecedented, a dress that responded to her energy signature, shifting colors and patterns with her emotions. The quantum harmonics are holding steady, Reyna reported, running final checks on the modified ceremonial equipment. Though I'm still not entirely sure how we're broadcasting this simultaneously to Earth and across the Aetherian Empire. Crystal quantum entanglement networks, first speaker Lizorat explained, making final adjustments to Lyra's gown. Your people call it quantum communications. We simply learned to harness it through crystal resonance millennia ago. The preparations were interrupted by an urgent message from Earth's diplomatic corps. Several nations were expressing concern about the sharing of advanced Aetherian technology. They feared it would destabilize Earth's careful political balance. Politics, Lyra sighed, watching the message scroll across her holographic display. Some things are universal, it seems. Indeed, Lizara agreed, which is precisely why this union is so crucial. It's not just about joining two people, or even two cultures. It's about showing both our peoples a better way forward. In his own preparation chamber, Zenith faced similar challenges. Conservative factions within the Aetherian court were making last-minute appeals, claiming the union would weaken their connection to the cosmic symphony. They don't understand, he told his most trusted advisor, examining his ceremonial robes that incorporated elements of an Earth military dress uniform. Our connection to the universe isn't weakened by change, it grows stronger through adaptation. The ceremony itself was unlike anything either civilization had witnessed. As Lyra walked the crystalline path toward Zenith, each step created ripples of energy that resonated through both the physical and spiritual planes. The combined quantum harmonic networks broadcast these effects across two worlds, letting everyone witness the unprecedented merger of sciences and spiritualities. We gather here, first speaker Lysara's voice carried through the hall and across the galaxies, to witness not just the union of two souls, but the birth of a new understanding between our peoples. The traditional Etherian soul-binding rituals had been modified to incorporate Earth's emphasis on spoken vows and personal choice. As Lyra and Zenith exchanged their promises, their words triggered responses in the crystal matrix surrounding them, creating a spectacular display of light and energy. Through this union, Zenith spoke, his galaxy eyes fixed on Lyra's. We bridge not just space, but understanding. We prove that difference need not mean division. With this bond, Lyra responded, feeling their resonance grow stronger with each word. We show that evolution and tradition can coexist, that change and preservation can strengthen each other. The moment of final binding approached. The entire hall held its breath as Lyra and Zenith placed their hands on the ancient crystal of unity. Their combined energy signatures created something entirely new, a harmonic pattern that spoke of both human determination and Etherian wisdom. But just as the binding was about to complete, alarms blared through the palace. Reports flooded in from the Carina Nebula. The energy patterns were shifting dramatically, threatening both mining operations and sacred sites. The nebula, Lizara gasped, reading the energy signatures. It's responding to your binding. The power of your combined resonance is affecting stellar formations. Instead of causing panic, this unexpected development seemed to validate everything they'd been working toward. The nebula itself was showing them how human and Etherian approaches could work together, creating new patterns of cosmic harmony. Don't you see? Zenith addressed the gathered dignitaries and the billions watching across two civilizations. This is what we can achieve together. Not just ceremony, not just technology, but a true synthesis of all we are. The crisis in the nebula stabilized as their binding completed, creating new formations that would take scientists and mystics generations to fully understand. The crystal song reached a crescendo that would be remembered for millennia to come. As the ceremony concluded, Lyra and Zenith stood not just as husband and wife, not just as representatives of their peoples, but as living proof that the greatest achievements come from embracing difference rather than fearing it. Ready to change the universe, Zenith whispered as they faced their combined peoples. Lyra smiled, feeling their shared resonance pulse with unlimited potential. We already have. This is just the beginning.